May 1, 2025. Newark Liberty International Airport, 3 p.m. Over 500 flights delayed, more than 200 canceled. A United Airlines flight took off from San Francisco headed to Newark and turned around over Nebraska mid-flight because Newark couldn't accept it. The average delay for arriving flights that day hit 381 minutes, 6.5 hours. Not because of a storm, not because of a mechanical failure, because the people responsible for guiding planes safely into the airspace simply weren't there. 20% of Newark's air traffic controllers walked off the job in a single week. The ones who stayed had just watched their radar screens go completely dark twice with live aircraft in the sky. They took trauma leave, and nobody came to replace them. This didn't come out of nowhere. Newark has been the most delayed major airport in America for years. And the reason it got here, the reason it stays here, is one airline that controls this airport so completely that its problems and the airport's problems have become the exact same problem. This is the story of how United Airlines built an empire at Newark, and how that empire is now holding 40 million passengers a year hostage. Newark Liberty International Airport, third busiest airport in the New York metropolitan area, 40 million passengers per year, gateway to one of the wealthiest, most densely populated regions on Earth. On paper, a competitive multi-airline hub. In reality, a United Airlines facility that happens to let other carriers park there occasionally. United controls 67% of all seat capacity at Newark. 2/3. Of every 3 planes taking off from Newark on any given day, 2 of them have a United tail. Their Terminal C is essentially a private facility, a hub within an airport that United has spent decades building into their East Coast stronghold. This is not accidental. It is the result of a deliberate strategy that goes back to 1987, when Continental Airlines, which United later merged with in 2012, established Newark as its primary hub after getting squeezed out of JFK and LaGuardia by American and Delta. Continental looked at Newark, underused, underfunded, sitting in New Jersey while the glamour airports got all the attention, and saw opportunity. They built it up, route by route, gate by gate, terminal by terminal. When United absorbed Continental in 2012, they inherited not just the planes and the routes, but the stranglehold. By 2024, United had turned that stranglehold into an empire. 67% capacity share, Terminal C rebuilt to their specifications, flights to over 150 destinations, the undisputed master of Newark, in a way that no airline is master of JFK or LaGuardia. And here's the structural problem that every passenger eventually discovers. When you give one airline that much control over one airport, their operational problems become the airport's operational problems. Their staffing failures become your delay. Their route cuts become your canceled flight. There is no redundancy. There is no backup. There is only United. To understand the May 2025 crisis, you need to understand the decision the FAA made in 2024 that nobody was paying attention to at the time. Newark's airspace has always been managed from a facility on Long Island, the New York TRACON, which handles the impossibly complex airspace over one of the most congested aviation corridors on Earth. New York, Newark, LaGuardia, JFK, all stacked on top of each other, planes climbing and descending through shared airspace every 40 seconds. In 2024, the FAA decided to move the controllers responsible for Newark's airspace from Long Island to a facility in Philadelphia. The logic was reasonable: consolidate operations, reduce handoffs, modernize the system. The execution was a disaster. The Philadelphia facility connected to Newark through a telecommunications system running on copper wire, infrastructure so outdated that Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy publicly called it an embarrassment to the country. When that system failed, and it failed twice within days in late April and early May 2025, controllers lost the ability to see radar and communicate with aircraft simultaneously for approximately 90 seconds each time. 90 seconds doesn't sound like much, but 90 seconds of blind silence when you're responsible for dozens of aircraft in one of the world's busiest airspaces is a trauma event. Multiple controllers immediately filed for stress leave after the first outage. More left after the second. The facility that was already chronically understaffed, the FAA had been offering $100,000 transfer bonuses to attract controllers to this posting for months, suddenly lost another chunk of its already depleted workforce. United CEO Scott Kirby wrote to employees and customers with language that was unusually blunt for a corporate communication. The facility, he said, had been chronically understaffed for years. And then he put the operational math in plain English. In ideal weather, with full staffing and perfect technology, the FAA told United that Newark can only handle 77 flights per hour. And yet, the FAA was regularly approving schedules of 80+ flights per hour every day between 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. His exact words, "This math doesn't work." He was right. The math hadn't worked for years. It just finally broke publicly in a way that couldn't be ignored. The federal response was faster than usual because the crisis was impossible to miss. United voluntarily canceled 35 round-trip flights per day from Newark, roughly 10% of its entire daily schedule, even before the FAA ordered anything. That voluntary cut cost United $218 million in Q2 2025 alone and forced a revision of their full-year earnings forecast from $11.50 to $13.50 per share down to $9 to $11. One airport, one crisis, hundreds of millions of dollars gone. Then the FAA moved formally. In May 2025, they imposed an emergency cap on Newark operations, limiting hourly arrivals and departures to 28 movements per hour during active runway construction, rising to 34 during non-construction periods. For context, United's own CEO said the airport needed 77 per hour to function. The FAA was now running it at less than half that. The cap was originally meant to run through the end of 2025. In August 2025, the FAA proposed extending it through October 24, 2026, a full 18 months of government-mandated flight restrictions at one of America's 3 most important East Coast airports. Passenger numbers reflected the damage immediately. Newark saw a 3% overall passenger decline in the first half of 2025. In May alone, the peak of the crisis, passenger volume dropped 20% compared to the same month the previous year. 20% of passengers at a major international hub evaporated in a single month. The infrastructure fixes started arriving in parallel. The FAA installed a new fiber optic communications network between Newark and the Philadelphia TRACON, replacing the copper wire system that had failed. New telecommunications redundancies were added, controller recruitment bonuses stayed in place. But here's the structural reality. Air traffic controllers take 3 years to fully train. You can't fix a staffing shortage with a check. You can announce fiber optics and bonuses. The bodies and the seats take years to produce. Newark's operational cap isn't temporary. It's a multi-year acknowledgement that the infrastructure serving this airport cannot safely handle the flights that were scheduled to use it. The obvious question, with Newark this unreliable, why haven't passengers and airlines simply moved elsewhere? Some have. During the peak of the May 2025 crisis, passengers rebooked onto JFK and LaGuardia flights in large numbers. Philadelphia, just 90 miles south, saw a bump in bookings from travelers abandoning Newark entirely. The competitive pressure is real at the margins, but the structural answer is that Newark's geography and United's network make it very difficult to replicate what the airport offers.
United's Newark hub is built around transatlantic connections. It's one of the most important gateways to Europe on the East Coast, with direct flights to over 30 European destinations. Those routes, those schedules, those connections don't exist at the same scale at any nearby alternative. JFK handles the same transatlantic market, but it's dominated by American, Delta, and international carriers who don't replicate United's specific network. LaGuardia is slot-restricted and handles limited international flying. Philadelphia is growing, but remains a fraction of Newark's connectivity. For the corporate traveler flying from Newark to Frankfurt, or the passenger connecting from a United domestic flight to a transatlantic departure, there is genuinely no easy alternative that provides the same routing. This is the monopoly trap in its purest form. United didn't build Newark's dominance to create problems. They built it to create loyalty and connectivity. The side effect is that when the system breaks, passengers are structurally captive to a broken system with no comparable exit.
And United knows it. Their Q2 2025 earnings call, despite the $218 million Newark hit, projected confidence that the hub would stabilize once infrastructure improvements took hold. Their stock dropped 23% year-to-date in 2025, then recovered as operations improved. The market believes Newark survives. Passengers aren't given the choice of believing anything else. Here's the complete picture. United controls 67% of Newark. They built that dominance deliberately over 35 years, inherited from Continental, expanded through every downturn. The result is an airport that is functionally a private hub with public infrastructure, and public infrastructure that wasn't maintained to match the private demand placed on it. The FAA moved Newark's controllers to a facility in Philadelphia, connected by copper wire technology older than most of the planes using the airspace. When that system failed twice in a week, controllers took trauma leave. 20% of the facility's already depleted workforce disappeared. Over 1,400 delays and cancellations in a single week. A flight turned around over Nebraska, arriving passengers waiting 6.5 hours on the ground. The FAA capped operations at less than half of what the airport's own airlines had scheduled. That cap was extended through October 2026. United lost $218 million in one quarter at one airport and was forced to cut its full-year earnings forecast. The fixes are real: fiber optics installed, bonuses offered, recruitment pipelines opened. But controllers take 3 years to train. Infrastructure takes longer to rebuild than it took to neglect. Newark is not permanently broken. The operations data from Q1 2025, before the May crisis, showed it was actually the most on-time airport in the New York area for that period. The potential is there, but an airport where one airline controls 2/3 of capacity, where the government infrastructure supporting it failed so completely that controllers walked off the job with live aircraft in the sky, and where the FAA had to impose emergency flight limits for 18 consecutive months, that airport has a structural problem that a fiber optic cable and a $100,000 bonus don't fully solve. The math, as Scott Kirby himself said, doesn't work. It hasn't worked for years. And the 40 million passengers who use Newark every year are the ones doing the arithmetic.